Alex, is the Job Guide 360 interview guide worth it?
Honestly, yes, the guide is highly insightful. I recommend it to everyone.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, pretty strategic. We're not just scratching the surface of risk assessment.
No, not at all.
We're aiming to reverse engineer the mindset, really, the strategic thinking of a top-tier risk manager.
Yeah.
Going beyond those standard checklists and, diving into the communication skills, the prioritization methods, basically what it takes to guide an organization through all that uncertainty.
That's exactly right. We've dug into a really detailed 2025 guide, one specifically for risk manager interview prep. It's basically the playbook hiring managers use.
So we're getting the inside track.
Pretty much. We've found a shortcut, you could say, to understanding what that strategic thinking actually looks like in the role. We're pulling out those essential traits, focusing on how a successful manager handles pressure, handles those resource constraints.
Not just listing the risks themselves.
Precisely. It's about the approach.
Okay, so we're mapping out the strategic themes. The goal here is to give you, our listener, a way to grasp this strategic approach to risk moving beyond just avoiding problems and into, well, creating actual value. Let's kick off with segment one then. Strategic prioritization. I mean, this feels like the absolute core of the job, right?
It really is.
Constantly juggling competing timelines, limited resources. The source material really hammers on a kind of dual focus. What's the guide say about mastering that fundamental challenge of time?
Well, what's fascinating is this necessary duality they talk about. You've got to be focusing equally on staying agile for immediate threats, think daily market swings or, an active cyber issue.
The day-to-day fires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
While at the same time investing in your core systems, your culture for that long-term resilience. The guide really stresses that the best managers align those quick tactical responses with the organization's bigger, maybe multi-year strategic plan.
So you can't just react.
You can't just react. Every immediate action needs to serve a bigger, more stable goal down the line.
That sounds, well, exhausting. Constantly fighting fires while you're also designing the next fire station, so to speak.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
So when resources are genuinely tight, how does a top manager get past that sort of basic risk discussion and actually make the hard calls? Where do you focus the investment?
Okay, so the key thing here is moving beyond just that simple, impact and likelihood matrix everyone knows.
Right, the standard 2x2 grid.
Yeah. The successful approach involves a more rigorous, quantified evaluation. You have to assess the risk based on potential impact, but translated directly into financial terms, often using something like annualized loss expectancy or ALE.
So you're forcing the conversation away from just vague worries and onto the budget spreadsheet.
Exactly right. You're speaking the language of finance. And the source specifically points out you should almost always tackle compliance issues first, regardless of other priorities.
Okay, why is that?
Because failure in compliance, that leads to immediate, certain, and often severe consequences. We're talking fines, serious reputational damage. By quantifying those immediate damages, you make sure you address what truly matters first. It aligns the risk talk with, say, the CFO's priorities.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, even with the best planning, things happen. Risks materialize. What if a major issue, slips through? What steps do you take if a critical risk pops up late in a project cycle? Maybe something threatening to derail a big initiative.
Right. The strategy has to be immediate, transparent, and really collaborative. First step. An immediate, very prompt assessment of the risk's full potential impact. No downplaying it.
Get the facts straight.
Then you quickly pull together a targeted mitigation plan, but crucially, alongside all the affected stakeholders. This isn't something the risk manager does in a silo.
But isn't the real battle there sometimes just organizational fatigue? If a project's already late, maybe over budget, how does the guide suggest you stop stakeholders from just throwing up their hands or minimizing this new risk?
That's a really sharp point. And the guide suggests the only antidote to that fatigue is relentless, structured communication. But importantly, not blame.
Focus on the fix, not the fault.
Exactly. The manager has to set up continuous monitoring, make sure the plan can be adjusted if things change, and communicate the progress back to those stakeholders. Show them their input is working, that the project is still viable, just adjusted. It's really about rebuilding trust in a process that's under stress.
That focus on structure and communication leads us nicely into segment 2, the soft skills of risk. Because all the technical know-how doesn't mean much if you can't communicate it right.
Absolutely critical.
This is where it gets tough, how risk managers navigate those internal disagreements, how they sell caution, without just being seen as the Department of No.
Yeah, this is huge. A great risk manager isn't just crunching numbers, they're a master persuader, maybe even a storyteller. When you're facing skeptics, the approach has to be using data and logic, yes, but translating that technical stuff into specific, tangible, high-level business consequences.
So instead of just saying, our firewall is weak, what's the better way to phrase it? According to the guide.
The source suggests focusing on the outcome the executive actually cares about. Like, the example they give is convincing people to take a data breach risk seriously. You lay out exactly how it could lead to, say, customer churn, negative press cycles, and hit the quarterly earnings with substantial financial penalties.
That clear line from the technical issue to the business impact. Loss of trust, loss of revenue.
Precisely. That forces the shift in perspective.
Okay, that proactive, data-driven persuasion sounds key. Now, what about when priorities genuinely clash? Let's say the product team wants to push a new feature out now, but the risk team is saying, hold on, we need a 2-week security audit. How do you handle that disagreement without things getting adversarial?
The first step, always, is active listening. You really have to understand the other team's pressures, their goals, why the urgency.
Empathize first.
Right. Then, when you share your perspective, it absolutely has to be backed by solid evidence, data showing the proportional threat. But the goal isn't just to win the argument.
It's about finding a solution.
It's about working collaboratively to find common ground, a genuine compromise. Maybe you agree to launch the feature, but you implement some compensating controls immediately while that full audit happens in parallel. You align speed with safety.
And to help these discussions along, especially when you've got non-technical people in the room, what makes for effective communication in a risk meeting?
Clarity and inclusivity are just paramount. You need to encourage active listening, sure, but you also need tools to bridge that knowledge gap. A really vital visual aid mentioned is the use of risk heat maps.
The red, amber, green charts.
Exactly. When they're done well, they bypass all the jargon, they keep discussions grounded, help everyone from a junior analyst to a senior VP quickly grasp the key threats and align on what needs doing.
It's fascinating how communication needs to shift depending on the audience. How do you talk about these complex risks to, say, the board, non-technical stakeholders, without completely overwhelming them?
Yeah, this is where you have to move almost entirely to clear storytelling and strictly jargon-free language. The source really emphasizes breaking down technical concepts into relatable everyday scenarios.
Got an example.
Sure. Instead of talking about DDoS attack vectors, maybe you explain the cybersecurity risk to the executives by comparing it to everyday security. Like the difference between leaving your house unlocked versus having multiple deadbolts and an alarm system.
Makes sense. It makes the abstract feel tangible.
Exactly, and actionable. It allows the board to make confident, informed decisions based on the company's risk appetite, not just based on confusion or fear.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me because it shifts from managing controls to managing people. Segment 3. Building that risk culture. How does risk move from being just one department's job to being part of the whole organization's DNA?
It really starts with psychological safety and trust. You have to actively encourage everyone, doesn't matter their role, to speak up about potential issues. And crucially, without fear of blame or retribution.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. To make it practical, embed it in the workflow. The guide suggests things like holding targeted interactive workshops, get teams mapping out risks specific to their projects. They need to feel ownership of the risk, not like it's just being dictated to them.
And it needs to be baked into the strategy itself, right? Not just bolted on at the end. How does a top risk manager really integrate risk management into strategic planning? Turn it from a compliance checkbox into, well, a strategic advantage.
It means being proactive. Assessing challenges and aligning those risk controls with the overall business objectives right from the start. A strategic manager insists on having a seat at the table when big decisions are made, like expansion.
So for instance,
if the company's planning to enter a new overseas market, you're evaluating the regulatory and geopolitical risks up front, before commitments are made. This lets the organization shape strategies that are resilient from day one. You're essentially turning uncertainty into a calculated opportunity instead of just waiting for things to go wrong.
that proactive stance really defines strategic management, doesn't it?
It does.
Now, thinking about leadership within the risk function itself. What's the right way to mentor and develop junior staff? How do you build that pipeline?
You've really got to focus on personalized guidance and maximizing practical exposure. It's not about lectures, it's about giving them ownership.
Learning by doing.
Exactly. Create an open environment, sure, where they can ask questions, but more importantly, encourage hands-on involvement with real, live risk assessments. Maybe even let them lead a small mitigation effort. Working through a challenging case with that personalized mentorship alongside, that's the fastest way to build their confidence and foster genuine critical thinking.
And finally, in this section, how does a successful risk manager keep things fresh? Avoid that complacency trap, especially when threats evolve so quickly.
It demands a system of both proactive and reactive measures. Proactively, you have to be constantly scanning the external environment, looking for emerging threats, updating assessments. You know, if AI deepfakes suddenly become a major fraud issue, your entire fraud risk assessment needs to pivot.
And reactive.
Reactively, you have to rigorously learn from past incidents. Let's say there's a supply chain disruption. You don't just fix that one immediate problem. You go back and enhance all your vendor risk review processes across the board. And critically, this progress has to be measurable, using things like key risk indicators, KRIs, to track improvements in real time.
Okay, for the listener who wants those practical, immediate takeaways, things maybe to put on their professional development checklist, let's wrap with segment 4, the practical toolkit. First, let's get specific on quantitative analysis skills. What's expected?
Right. Quantitative analysis really moves beyond just simple qualitative ratings. It involves using complex numerical methods, statistical models, to accurately measure and predict exposure. We're not just talking basic spreadsheets here.
So what's a specific technique that really separates the advanced practitioners?
The guide specifically calls out employing Monte Carlo simulations. Now, for the listener, what this means is having the ability to model thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of possible risk scenarios, like, say, the financial fallout from a new product line, failing to accurately define the range of potential financial exposure.
Wow.
This highly detailed data then directly informs and helps optimize strategic decisions. It takes risk from being a guess towards being more of a hard science.
Got it. Now, when you're facing those really tricky problems, the ones with limited, maybe imperfect information, what's the expected problem-solving process?
Yeah, that's common. The process starts by acknowledging the data gap. Then, you gather whatever intelligence you can get, no matter how small. But since data is scarce, the most vital step is consulting cross-functional teams immediately.
Tap into collective knowledge.
Exactly. Use their specialized knowledge to help fill in the blanks. And then, you use structured scenario planning, asking those, what if X happens? Or what if Y is worse than we think? Questions to anticipate potential outcomes. It's this collaborative approach that allows for informed decisions, even when you're dealing with high uncertainty.
And for anyone looking to brush up on their tech skills, what tools are considered standard? Any specific platforms the guide mentions as must-knows?
You definitely need to be comfortable with the main enterprise governance, risk, and compliance platforms, often called GRC platforms. This includes tools like Archer and Logic Manager. They're used for streamlining risk assessment, managing controls, robust reporting. On the compliance side, familiarity with something like RiskWatch for ongoing monitoring is often key. And for pulling it all together across a large enterprise, knowing systems like IBM OpenPages is often essential. These platforms really help standardize processes and ensure effective communication, especially in big organizations.
Excellent, very practical. Lastly, let's touch on preparation. If you're heading into a high-stakes risk discussion, maybe that interview, how should you conduct your research to make sure your perspective is perfectly tailored?
The research needs to be razor sharp. You have to dig into the company website, yes, but not just for products. Look specifically for any risk management jargon they publish. If you can find their specific risk appetite statement, that's gold.
Look for their language.
Use their language. On LinkedIn, check out profiles of senior staff in risk or related areas. See what skills and experiences they highlight and value. And most importantly, read recent industry news and actively connect global risk trends. Things like data localization laws, new cyber threats directly back to that specific company's business model and vulnerabilities.
Make it relevant.
Highly relevant.
The final small detail, but sometimes critical presentation. Any advice there?
Always project a professional, focused presence. The standard recommendation is a professional suit, usually in neutral colors. Keep any jewelry minimal and polished. And definitely avoid anything distracting that includes strong perfumes or colognes. The focus needs to be entirely on the clarity and strength of your strategic message.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the core takeaway? It seems to me that high-level risk management success really boils down to two key things. First, that strategic, quantified prioritization, evaluating based on demonstrable financial impact and likelihood. And second, communication mastery, using data, clarity, and that spirit of compromise to really drive organizational alignment.
Precisely. And if that risk framework truly requires rigorous identification, assessment, control, continuous monitoring, and if leaders really must make calm, informed decisions under intense pressure, well, it raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. How effectively is your organization turning uncertainty into a calculated opportunity rather than just defaulting to simple avoidance? Thinking about that, assessing that honestly, that's the true measure of an integrated strategic risk mindset.
A very compelling thought to end on indeed. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope this look inside the risk manager mindset